Hi, my name is Jane Picarelli, and today I'm going to be talking about the synapse. Neurotransmission is the process that allows our brain cells to communicate with each other. The area that serves as the junction between a signal sending cell and a signal receiving cell is called a synapse. There are two types of synapses, electrical and chemical. Electrical synapses are mediated by current and do not have a synaptic cleft, which will be discussed shortly, and instead are connected by a gap junction. This is in contrast to a chemical synapse that has a physical gap between neurons called the synaptic cleft. Let's take a look at a chemical synapse. Here you see an image of two brain cells. Here's one, here's the other. Brain cells are also known as neurons. Remember that gap we talked about a moment ago called a synapse? Well, the brain cell that occurs before the synapse is accordingly called the presynaptic neuron. The brain cell that occurs after the synapse is therefore called the postsynaptic neuron. Let's talk a little bit about the anatomy of the brain cell. In the middle, you actually have the nucleus of the cell. Extending from the nucleus of the cell are what's called dendrites. These receive incoming signals. You have this long tube-like extension that's called the axon that an action potential travels across. This green right here is the myelin sheath. Now extending from the axon are what is called the axon terminals. Now it is between the axon terminals of the presynaptic neuron and the dendrites of the postsynaptic neuron where the synapse is located, and we'll discuss what's going on here in just a moment. The image depicted in this picture represents a chemical synapse. The orange structure on the left represents the axon terminal of a presynaptic neuron. The orange structure to the right represents the membrane of a postsynaptic neuron. The bright reddish and orangish circles represent ions, which are charged particles. The green circles represent vesicles, and the purple squares inside of them represent neurotransmitters. The blue rectangles represent voltage-gated channels, and the pink ovals represent ligand-gated ion channels. This little gap area right here between the pre- and postsynaptic spots is called the synaptic cleft. Now that you know what you are looking at, let's discuss the mechanics. As an action potential, which is shown here by the yellow arrow, reaches the axon terminal, it causes the membrane to depolarize, which allows for the opening of voltage-gated channels that allow an influx of a particular ion in, which you can see as this ion is now entering. This influx causes the vesicles shown in green here, which house the neurotransmitters, to let the neurotransmitters out via exocytosis, which you see happening here. The neurotransmitter is able to cross this synaptic cleft and binds to a ligand-gated ion channel, as shown here. The neurotransmitter is bound to the ligand-gated ion channel. This opens the channel, allowing for an influx of ions. Depending on the charge of the ion, this can either lead to a new action potential, also known as a nerve impulse, if it causes it to depolarize to threshold, or it can hyperpolarize it, which would end the signal transmission.